Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight podcast and part 2 of the Uinta Highline Trail, which is actually attempt 2 at the Uinta Highline Trail. So if you missed the first episode, make sure to go back and listen to that. That will introduce what we're about to start talking about, which will be the second half of this trip. Again, this is the Live Ultralight podcast. It is powered by Outdoor Vitals. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. But we're going to jump straight back into this story, starting with the morning of day 3. So like we left off in the last episode, we just camped at the base of Anderson Pass. We are sitting at 41 miles into the trip at this point. The trip being somewhere between about 105, 110 miles total. And we're about to do the largest pass of the trip. Well, basically the 2 largest passes of the trip. And we're going to attempt to do it all in a single day. So we know today is going to be a massive day. And to make matters worse, Tyler decided to wake up an hour before us at 5:30 a.m. and get an early start so that he could go summit the highest peak in Utah, which... I think you were the only one that hadn't done it. Have you done Kings Peak? No. So Brigham still has yet to do Kings Peak. Oh man.
Yeah, to me,
embarrassing.
To me, it was like most people who come to do Highline try to do that summit because it is like just kind of a big thing to hit the highest peak in Utah, but also be able to like include that in the trip for the week. So I was excited to try and get up there. I wasn't excited to be going to bed at like 10:30 at night and waking up at 5:30 and immediately just hitting this wall of Anderson Pass. But I figured it would be worth it, and I figured that I had trained enough to be able to add that 3 miles to the day. The day was looking like it was going to be 22 to 23 miles if we were to get up and over Anderson, all the way down through Painter's Basin, and then up and over North Pole Pass at the end of the day. And I was a little nervous to be the only one attempting that and to be adding 3 more miles to the day when the rest of you guys would have had less miles and be feeling better at the end of the day. But I couldn't help myself. I just wanted to get up there and see it.
On paper, it should have only added about 1.5 miles, maybe 2, plus 800 feet of climbing. But Tyler's watch is really good at tracking extra miles, so he probably ended up with 3 or 4 extra miles on the day somehow. But waking up an extra hour early, I mean, that's precious time on a trip like this where we're really hiking from sun up to sundown. But so I heard Tyler got up at 5:30, heard you get up and go. The rest of us wake up at 6:30. I needed to go get some water, so the first thing I did was go find some water. But it was shaping up to be a really good day. I would say we kind of all got on our own clicks. We actually all went up Anderson Pass basically alone. Brigham, I guess, did end up meeting up with Derek and kind of finishing it up. But I got behind everyone when I went to go filter water and had a really enjoyable trip up. I was absolutely reminded of why we did not want to come down that pass in the snow, especially towards the top. There's some areas that, man, I would not have wanted to be trying to attempt in 6 to 12 inches of snow, and never having been on that, and not having any kind of, I don't know, crampons or anything to just be extra careful. But there's a few parts in it that are tough, but I would say from my perspective, I'll let you guys kind of share this too. It was a really, I would say, kind of special pass for me, because the first time I had ever gone into the Uintas was when we did Kings Peak in 2018. And in 2018, we went up, spent the night, and then we, summited Kings Peak, came back down, spent the night, and left. So it was like a 26-mile trip, and we took basically 3 days or 2 nights to do so. And as we summited Kings Peak, I felt like trash. Going up Anderson Pass, I was really struggling. I had been dropping weight that year already, so I'd already dropped like 10 pounds. I thought I was in really good shape. We hit the pass, and it was just a really humbling pass where I was watching especially Derek and Darren just cruising up the pass and then cruising up to Kings Peak as well. And me just feeling like, man, I cannot keep up with these guys. My fitness isn't there. I don't feel good. You know, a little bit of elevation sickness. And so that was like
carrying a frying pan.
Yeah, I should have left the frying pan down at camp. And that was not me carrying a full load either. That was me. We had left most of our camping essentials down in the bottom. So kind of went from that to the next time we came out was, you know, last year, and being able to do some of those passes was pretty fun to just see like where my fitness had got to, I guess, just year over year, right? Like year over year fitness and training. And then this year I started up the pass, and I was just kind of thinking about that. And as I started up, I'm like, I wonder if I could hike this entire pass without stopping for water or a break or anything like that. Like if I would be in that good a shape. And so I just kind of made it a little self goal to try something like that. And I was able to do it. And it was kind of one of those just really, I feel like every once in a while you get an opportunity to like see year over year fitness. And there's a lot to it. Like I wish Joe was still on the podcast. Joe was in part 1. He left. We voted him off the island on day 2, and so he's not in this podcast room right now. But I wish that he knew.
He doesn't get to be in this part, apparently.
Yeah, no, he left on his own. I know. But I hope that he listens to this part and just kind of sees, like, he's been training for like 8 months, but endurance and some of this type of training can take years, right? There's a lot of people in our Live Ultralight membership as well that have gone out and trail and, you know, realized, you know, just the amount of fitness it can take to do 20 miles a day and some of these things. But they've all been very happy with the experience, but they didn't quite meet their goals. And I think to all of you guys and Joe, it's like some of this type of training can just take year over year progress. And so it was really cool for me to get up through Anderson and be like, holy cow, I did that whole pass without stopping, feeling way better, you know, not losing my breath, all these things, and comparing that to just 4 years previously where I was dying, my head hurt, my lungs were on fire, my legs were on fire, I was not happy, you know, like just kind of struggling mentally. And that was like a cool opportunity, I would say, to just be able to look back, reflect, and be like, man, this stuff really can be year over year progress, not just month over month or week over week. Some of this stuff can be year over year progress. But how was your guys' Anderson Pass climb?
Well, for me, I had the pressure of trying to get up to Kings Peak and then back down to the top of Anderson Pass by the time that you guys got up there. Like, because I didn't want to slow anyone down too much or make it like a detriment as far as weather goes, because we still had kind of bad weather thoughts looming that, you know, we were worried that we wouldn't be able to get over North Pole Pass at the end of the day if the bad weather came in. So I pushed pretty hard going up Anderson Pass. It was really nice because I was started up it before the sun came up, and I got to watch the sunrise from up there, which was really cool. But I pushed pretty hard and went pretty fast, and same for Kings Peak. Once I got to Anderson Pass, that's 12,700 feet, and then I had to get up to 13,500 feet to Kings Peak, and so I was pushing. But when I made it to the top of Kings Peak, I was the only one there, which was awesome because you're rarely at a summit like that by yourself. And I got time to take some really cool panoramic photos, like just as the sun is coming into the basin that we had crossed the morning before. I could see every pass that we had gone over from the previous 2 days, which was like really gratifying to think, holy smokes, we went so far in that time. And then I called my wife and girls and got to talk to them for a second, and
it's like one of the only places on trail you get service is right at Kings Peak.
Yeah. So I called them, and then I like scrambled back down really fast. And I just remember coming back down thinking, it's a miracle that me or anyone else can make it up to Kings Peak and back without rolling or breaking their ankle. Because the entire mountain is just wobbly rocks, like big 150 to 500 pound wobbly rocks, and it's kind of sketchy going up and down it. But I got back to you guys, and how long had you been there? Like
10 to 15 minutes. We could see you like 5 or 10 minutes after we got there, and so you weren't that far away. It was timing was pretty good.
Yeah, so I felt pretty good about that. I would have enjoyed hanging out there up on top for another couple of hours, but I felt pretty good. And I did really enjoy doing that hike just kind of by myself, leaving my, like when we hike together a lot, we talk a lot because we can and we have a lot to talk about. But I really enjoyed that early morning up there.
You just dumped your pack on trail. I remember seeing that. I mean, you went ultra minimal. You took one trekking pole and one bottle of water, and his whole everything else you owned was just sitting there on the trail.
No, I had toilet paper in my pocket, and I had the inReach.
True essentials.
I had the inReach in my pocket, so I had the four
essentials,
and my phone in my pocket. So that was all I needed for that part.
For me, I thought Anderson Pass was actually pretty dang easy because, like we mentioned before, we all kind of went off on our own on this one. I'd left camp because I'd packed everything up and really just had nothing else to do, so I'm just going to go. And then Brigham wasn't too far behind, and Tayson went off to get water. But I filmed along the way. I think I was clicking along at a pretty quick pace, but I stopped frequently to film Brigham underneath me. I could see him hiking up on some switchbacks below, or Tayson even further below after you got water, and just doing that, and kind of along with what Tyler just said. I enjoyed the early morning hiking up that thing to myself and whatever pace I wanted, and
it makes a world of difference to do a pass like that in the morning.
Yeah,
I feel like
it does,
because we had, to me, and as the day went on too, the next pass was not as kind. But waking up in the morning, fresh legs, your energy stores are kind of rejuvenated, spirits are kind of high. It was for a pass that has kicked our butts in the past or had weather in the past. It was I remember getting to the top and just thinking this was suspiciously good and easy. I don't know, you know what I mean?
The wind was
where's the weather? Where's the fatigue?
Yeah, there wasn't even wind whipping in the morning. There was calm air at the top even.
Yeah, that was incredible.
It was, so I don't know if you have any thoughts on Anderson, but
No, you're good.
Yeah, so we took a little break there, had a little bit of service, and then we started down. These guys were talking to some people, but this was kind of the next part of it. Is we did not get another 20 minutes or 20 steps down the trail before we ran into a group, it seemed like, and they called us out. They knew who we were.
We just watched your Highline video. You guys are the Outdoor Vitals guys.
Yeah. And that started a whole theme for the entire next day and really the rest of the trip, which was really cool. So if you're one of the people that called us out, talked to us on trail, thanks. I mean, we do appreciate that. It's always fun to talk to people in person. I mean, I wish we could do more live, in-person shows, because I really do enjoy interacting with people. It's kind of hard for us to do in-person shows, just the toll it takes and stuff. But it's fun to talk to you guys on trail and in person, because a lot of times we're either doing our own thing on trail or we're working here in our own offices, and so it's a bit of a disconnect than compared to maybe what it was like 50 years ago when you'd come into a shop and only buy gear from a shop or something. But yeah, it was cool because I don't know which one. I mean, we passed a group, they said hi, talked to us. We passed another group, they're like, oh yeah, we got your gear in our bag right now. Lots of guys with top quilts out there from us. But I remember one of the groups that we'd passed. They're like, oh, you guys got through Anderson Pass. They knew us well enough that they're like, you guys did it. You came back and got through Anderson Pass. But we talked about this a little bit on trail, but we saw a lot of groups. This is the busiest section of the trail by far, because people come up from a trailhead called Henry Forks, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Henry Forks. And they can come straight at Kings Peak from that side. So it is the busiest section of trail. But 50%, if not more, of every group we passed, stopped us, knew us. Hey, we know your podcast, or hey, we watched your Highline video, or hey, I've got your top quilt or whatever gear, got your Ventus in the pack. And that was a very unexpected and cool, I think, kind of surprise out on trail. It was cool. I think everyone in the group was, validated and felt good about just like the work that we put in here at the office, and sometimes feeling a little bit disconnected from the rest of the people. But
it was definitely cool, and I had fun encountering these people and chatting with them.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of a slowdown. It did slow us down quite a bit. That was on my mind.
I think
no offense to anybody, I love you, but
we probably
I kind of
lost.
want to just keep walking.
My estimate would be an hour, anywhere between an hour to 2.5 hours of what we lost that day just from talking to people. If you add it all together, it'd be somewhere in that window would be my guess.
Yeah, I was thinking that we probably talked to around 30 people. So there was a lot of people up there. I was real happy I got to Kings Peak when I did, because it was going to be real crowded an hour later.
Yeah, and in that 30 minutes that we were up there, it's just the groups just kept coming and coming.
Yeah.
It was cool to see though that some of the people that we met and that recognized us, like you mentioned, Tayson. There was sometimes, or a lot of times at least, a couple people in the group that you could tell didn't maybe know us, but they could see how their friends or family or whoever was, responding or reacting to us. And one of them was a teenager. I noticed he was kind of standing off there, and I noticed him kind of look at their packs and mention to the guy standing next to him, like, how light are their packs?
They had a few people ask us straight up, like, how light are your packs?
Another guy was, I think it was one of the guys that we just went by with. I gave him a fist bump as we were passing or something, and one of them mentioned, hey, I'm about ready to buy some more of your gear after this trip,
Yes.
That looks like a better deal. And that was kind of cool to see as well, like people recognizing, hey, like there is, like we're happy, like Tayson's mentioned this a lot of times, we're super happy to see people outside and we support that, but we're also happy to see when people can see that there's a more comfortable way to enjoy the outdoors. And so, that's part of what we're about is living ultralight will make your experience that much better. And it was cool to see people recognizing that for themselves. Just, if I had that, this trip would be X amount better or more comfortable or more fun or whatever,
Yeah, it was a visible contrast because we were doing the entire Highline Trail with 40-liter packs, and a lot of the people that were just doing overnighters had much larger packs, and so they would see us and they would ask, like, how far have you come? And we would tell them, and they'd be like, oh, wow, like, you've gone a long ways. And so I think that's, like, when we joke around about the frying pans, it's just because we've learned from our mistakes to the point now that we like to pack very light and compact, and it enables us to be comfortable in 20-mile days. So,
yeah. We definitely got asked that multiple times, like, how heavy are your packs and just stuff like that, because there was just such a stark contrast between some of them for sure. But it was cool. It was definitely cool to talk to some of the people that we'd helped lighten their packs, and we definitely had some other people that knew us and said, hey, I'm going to be shopping after this trip because the Uintas is a very unique place, a very unique wilderness area where you will learn pretty quickly the value of lightness, both because of, just the amount of miles, the amount of elevation, all that kind of stuff. But I would also add in one other element that we have not yet talked about, which is the trails up there are pretty much just rock. Like, they could really use some more dirt on their trails instead of just rocks. It's everywhere. Brutal. And so when you're bouncing and rock hopping, rock to rock to rock, all that kind of stuff, and you've got a big unstable backpack on, you just feel it that much more. Every rock hop, underneath your foot, the rocks digging up and into your feet, you're going to feel those more. And then just the overall stability of maneuvering. It all takes energy. It all takes effort. And people that are out there on these trails can definitely feel that and see that. And it becomes more apparent in a situation like this where it's just less forgiving out there, period. So,
even with our loads, I've never had any issues with like my hips or joints really and anything like that. But we were coming down Anderson Pass. I looked at my watch or pace sometimes 16-minute miles in the 17 was very common for the speed that we were descending. And the trail was not
Garbage.
smooth. It was a lot of big step downs, a lot of boulders to step over or around or twist. And even with light packs, you could feel the impact in your feet. I think that's the day where I started to experience some issues with my hip. My left hip started having some problems. I think I had twisted too far or something, or in some way just had some issues with that. But
I told him it's because he's finally getting old. He does have a couple gray hairs
My wife
now.
did find 3 or 4 gray hairs on my head this year, so I have become an old guy.
To give you an idea of the trail, though, because throughout the entire Highline, it's almost the same the whole way, but there's so much rain and precipitation that they get up there that all of the dirt washes away from between this granite rock. And so the trail is like a dugout 2-foot wide stream bed is really like what it is. Because when it rains, it turns into a stream. And just imagine walking down a rocky creek or stream for 100 miles, and that's the condition of the Highline Trail.
Yeah, they're just waterways that are dry and filled with rocks.
Yep.
That's what the trail is.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not very forgiving for sure, and if you cannot come off that trail, you cannot complete the Highline Trail, I think, without having much stronger ankles and more stable knees and all of that. So
tenderized feet.
Tenderized feet, for sure.
Someone to cook those up right after the Highland. That's sauce.
So we get through Anderson Pass, we cross Painter Basin, we get stopped a bunch talking to people, which was awesome. We get to dinner. I think we have dinner at sometime between about 5:30ish.
Fox Lake.
Yep, just above Fox Lake. And we potentially have some rain coming in. So, I put on my rain gear to shoo it away, and that worked pretty good. So we really didn't even get rained on.
Like 5 drops fall. So
yeah.
that
We
was
pulled
about the
weather.
extent of my rain jacket use on this entire trip.
Yeah, we could hear thunder to the south of us. The wind was blowing like from the southeast. So it looked like the weather would possibly miss North Pole Pass, but we were getting nervous about getting caught in the weather up there again because we were in the storm last year there. So we pulled the weather on the Garmin InReach, and it said there was a 10% chance of rain up there. So we took it.
Well, and the bid there was kind of one bigger, heavy, dark cloud that like the 18 raindrops came out of, but like it pretty much just broke up, and the clouds really started kind of dispersing by the time we started going up the actual pass. It was pretty nice. That it was reassuring that it really didn't like.
We had
give us any
originally
thought that it
planned
was gonna rain.
to camp like just a little further than where we had dinner, but we decided it would be better to get up and over, not just with the weather being a wild card. And so at that point we were at like 21 or 22 miles on the day for dinner.
No, we had dinner on my watch, I think, at 18. For you, I think you were farther all the
Yeah, I
way
was
through because
21.
you'd done Kings.
You were there because you'd done Kings.
So we did dinner around 17, 18 miles. But I was done. I was like, man, if these guys said let's camp here, I would be all for it, because I was this was probably the pinnacle of the trip for me, where I felt the absolute worst. That like nausea that I'd kind of described happening at the end of the first or day 2 had really built for me, and between lunch and dinner it had gotten pretty bad. I was really nervous I wasn't going to be able to eat dinner. Shout out to Harvest Right. I had brought a freeze-dried meal that I had made myself in our Harvest Right freeze dryer, and that was really the only thing in my pack that looked like I could eat it or wanted to eat it, so I had that. I was still able to eat, but I just didn't feel like eating, and I think I had started to get a little behind on hydration as well. But it was hard because I was trying. I was really like focusing on drinking, focusing on hydrating, but I was feeling low energy and pretty nauseous, and knew that we had to get up and over this other, massive pass. And so yeah, had our dinner, and didn't want to drag it out too far, and we basically went to do North Pole Pass, and we had we had a polar opposite experience from the year before. The year before, when we did North Pole Pass, it was raining, a little bit of lightning on the outskirts, and was a pretty miserable pass for the most part.
It got dark on us when we were at the top of the pass, so we had to descend it in the dark, in the sleet and mud.
Yeah.
But this year, it was like amazing. It was clear. Beautiful. It was like a really comfortable temperature at the end of the day, and great views. And it wasn't like, at this point, day 3, we'd seen enough sun that we were getting sunburned, especially the backs of our calves, our necks, etc.
It didn't matter how much sunscreen I put on.
Yeah, Tyler layered it up like 4 times a day and still got super roasted on his calves. But like it was overcast just enough to where the sun wasn't a problem as we were up on top of this pass, and it was just so nice. Tayson was really having a hard time. I think he had tried to go up, leading all of us on the trail the first little while, and at one point we paused for a little breather, and Tyler passed him, and then Tayson basically the rest of the way up had to lock into Tyler's feet and just follow his feet because he was feeling so crappy. All he thought about, I think, was just focusing on those feet.
Yeah, I basically had to like mentally lock in. So I basically got behind Tyler, and I just thought, don't let him gap me. Just stay on him. Get up and over this pass. Not that Tyler was like racing up the pass. Tyler was just doing a very, I think, solid pace, good pace, what we'd been doing on most of the passes. But to me, man, that was like really tough. I was really not in a great place, and so I kind of mentally had to think about. I actually started thinking about ultra runners and how freaking like hard of people they are, and just like the crap that they do. Like talking like thinking of some of these guys that run some of these 100-milers through this type of terrain, and I was just thinking, man, the amount of pain those guys are feeling got to be way worse than what I'm feeling. So kind of just let that like ruminate in my mind and just like lock onto Tyler. I'm like, I'm either going to make it to the top behind Tyler or I'm going to throw up, but I'll do one of the two. So it worked out. It actually made it to the top of the pass, and literally as soon as we crested the pass and it got flat, I felt better. And so that was a good sign to me. Good sign, I guess, but it was a signal to me of like what I was feeling had to be pretty related to just exertion.
I actually am unsure on how you know when you crested the pass. Yeah. North Pole Pass is like, when you're going up the steep side of North Pole Pass, there's this big, huge cairn. Like some of the cairns to mark the trail up there were enormous.
They're like the size of polar bears, which is why we think Tayson calls it Polar Bear Pass.
They're like bigger than a man, just stacks of rocks. And you could see the one at what looks like the top when you're going up the really steep section, which is most of the pass. Zigzagging up the switchbacks on the steep, you're like, I just got to make it to that really tall pile of rocks up there. And when you get to that cairn, well, North Pole Pass kind of just curves, and it becomes more gradual, but it's still up.
Just a big rounded...
It's like a half-mile top.
And so when you get to that first big pile of rocks, you could look and you could see 3 more. You're like, oh, okay, well, that must be the top. That third one over there down...
It's like a never-ending false summit.
Yeah, and then you hike to that third one away, and it's like still going up gradually. There's just enough curve, kind of like the curvature of the earth. You can't see...
Then all of a sudden, you're walking downhill somehow.
Yeah, it's like, I had no idea when we switched from going up to all of a sudden now we're going gradually down. And that was like the longest pass ever. You're just like up above 12,000 feet walking from pile of rock to pile of rock for a long time, trying to figure out when you're going to start going down again. And
so when we got there, I started feeling better, whatever that was.
Wherever the top was, Tayson was doing good.
Well, to paint the image for you, like most of these passes that we've gone over so far in the trip are like the pass is a low spot in a knife edge ridge that connects multiple peaks. And so you climb up the pass, and then you climb straight back down the other side of the pass. But this one is like just this huge, long, gradual...
Like a saddle between some peaks still, but...
Yeah. And so, like, also to paint that picture, a lot of these other passes are less than a mile, like from the bottom of the one side to the bottom of the other. This one from dinner to where we camped was 4.5 miles. So to get over the pass was 2 to 3 times like the distance of what the other passes are.
Yeah. So we get up and over the pass, and on the other side there's this really cool little bowl that like looks really nice. It's pretty lush and green, but it's still really high up. And we weren't really planning to stay there. We knew it was another like 1.5 to 2 miles to get to like a camping site in the trees. And so as we got down to there, we're like, man, it's almost dark. We're at over 22 miles for the day, which is kind of that marker we were looking for. The Garmin weather report said there's only a 10% chance of rain. Let's just camp in this bowl tonight. Like, let's just pitch our tents right here in this bowl, and we'll call it good. And so after some prancing around the bowl, we've picked a spot and set up our tents, and things are going well. Pretty much got some really good photos, and I think I had climbed into my tent. Tyler was brushing his teeth, and I remember him making a noise, and so I look over at him, and he spits out his toothpaste and says, I just saw some dry lightning over there. And I was like, oh, cool. That'll go past us, like clear over there, you know what I mean? And that was it. We all go to bed. But maybe an hour later, 2 hours later, I hear Derek and Tyler, talking tent to tent in the dark now, talking about some kind of lightning off in the distance. And I'm thinking, oh, yeah, it's probably the same crap. It's just going the other direction.
I'd gotten up, actually. I woke up to like go pee, and so I'd gotten out of my tent, and it was pitch black by that time, and Tyler had already been up, I guess, watching this lightning. So when he saw me get up, we started chatting. He's like, see that lightning over there? So I'm just standing there and staring at these clouds that are just bright flashes all throughout these clouds. They're still kind of in the distance, so
like way in the distance. They looked like they were 30 miles south of us.
Some big flashes of lightning in them, but they were a ways away. So I'm like, well, that's really cool. I gotta have a view with my night pee. That was pretty. Then I go back into my tent and fall asleep.
I pulled the weather again right then, I think, and or did we pull it before we set up our tents? I can't remember.
You pulled it like then. You pulled it after we went to bed.
And because I was seeing these clouds, and they were like huge, tall clouds, and they were just lighting up with lightning like every 10 seconds or less. And so I pulled the weather again, and it said that there was like a 10 or 15% chance of rain at 3 a.m. And I was like, okay, I won't make a big deal out of this. We'll just sleep, and if it comes at 3 a.m., it looks like it would only be a 10% chance for an hour. So it's like, it looked like it was not going to be too bad. But that was at 10 o'clock when Derek and I had that little conversation, and I pulled that. And then by 11 o'clock, we were getting
No, I woke up at
pounded.
midnight. I woke up at midnight to my tent, like to just a torrent of wind hitting my tent. Just like, and it was so stark. It went from like dead silent to just like the wind just came swirling in. And I woke up and I was like, whoa, that was really surprising. And then I could kind of hear off in the distance something. And then all of a sudden the tent just flashed bright, and it was just like thunder and lightning were raining down upon us. And I'll be honest, I had a lot of thoughts. First thing I started to do was just count. Every time a lightning would strike, my tent would light up, I'd just start counting, 1, 2, 3, to just see how close that lightning actually was to us. And, I think initially I was counting closer to like 8 seconds and maybe up to 10 seconds. But man, like being up that high, it was booming, it was so loud.
Yeah,
and
we were like in an amphitheater type. Really, really good acoustics up there, I would say.
You could have an amazing rock concert up there for sure, and that's essentially what we were sitting in. And I remember me personally sitting there and just thinking like, oh my gosh, like this is coming in. It's coming in hot. It's so loud. We're so high. We're pretty exposed. Yeah, we might be in the bottom of this bowl, but we're still like there's nothing up here. There's no trees. There's
we're
no
above the tree line.
We were a
nothing like
mile
that.
above timberline.
And my mind started to go everywhere. So like some of my first thoughts were like, holy crap, like this is super sketchy. What have I brought these guys to do? Right? Like these guys are up here on basically a company trip and like now we're in the middle of this. And I remember laying as flat as I could on my pad, just thinking like, I don't even want to raise my arm. And then I look up and I see my Garmin InReach and I'm seeing my trekking poles and I'm thinking, trekking poles, they're carbon fiber, right? Those guys have aluminum poles, right? I think they got aluminum poles. So maybe it's less likely to strike carbon fiber over aluminum. Like I'm thinking of everything. And then I see my Garmin InReach and I'm like, well, maybe I should grab that. So I like cautiously reach up, grab my Garmin InReach, like put it on the ground. Like I'm thinking of everything. My mind was just going everywhere, just thinking. You feel so exposed, I think, in that scenario. Because again, now the lightning's like 5 seconds away, right? Like you're counting. And it was just like that for a solid 50 minutes to an hour, where for 50 straight minutes, I'm awake and I'm just counting lightning strikes. I'm just counting after every single lightning strike.
And what was crazy was nothing actually struck our bowl.
No.
But it was so dang loud and bright without it being right on us.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking about the most is like I feel like the rain and the wind was definitely the most intense part of the storm, not the lightning and the thunder, just because I was kind of doing the same thing of counting it, and like it was never like 3 seconds or less. Like I never counted anything. And so, realistically I was thinking, okay, well, half a mile, it's still a ways away. But I was also, reminding myself like, well, we are above tree line and it could be honest at any time. Like really, that storm could intensify and like isolate itself like at any given time. Like that's totally possible. It was a very intense, just like 50 minutes to an hour of like the wind and the rain. And it would have been kind of cool to be like removed a little bit and watch it and just like see the light show
climb out of your tent,
bouncing off the mountain. Like I was thinking of that. I was like, this could be really cool to watch, but
you should have just taken the GoPro and just shoved it out there.
It would have been cool.
I wasn't moving very much.
I don't think anyone was.
I didn't want to move. I had a fleece beanie on, and the wind was like blowing so hard it was like rubbing the fleece, and I was like, that's a bit of static electricity. And I'm like, I don't know, like,
is that going to attract?
So I just kind of like moved to the tallest part of the tent and just kind of laid like with my head off the pillow. So I was just a little bit lower. I mean, it's silly. I don't know if that made a difference or not, but I was just like, well, if I can reduce any static electricity.
It describes how we're all feeling, though. We're all feeling, how can we lay flatter on a pad right now,
When it first came in, I tried to lower my trekking poles. Like I reached up and I tried to lower my trekking poles, and then the tent was just like going crazy, and I was like, this tent is going to be shredded if I don't put the poles back up. So then I put the poles back up, and it did great in the wind, like in that crazy wind, but I was really wishing my poles could be shorter.
Yeah. I had a really great pitch. I had no sag or no anything, but I would second what Brigham was saying with the intensity of the rain. Like the intensity was coming down, it almost sounded like hail on my tent. Like it was so loud. And then the echo chamber of the thunder, and then the wind was crazy because it would gust at like, 40 miles an hour, it felt like. And then it could literally stop to 0 miles an hour and then just smash back into the tent at 40 miles an hour. And so it just like kept you on your toes, never knowing what was actually happening. It was like, oh, it's gone. And then just bam, it'd pile back into the tent, and then it'd stop, and then it would lessen, and then it would intensify. I remember, we geek out about this all the time, and Brigham he's always joking about how much we talk about, oh, what's your watch mileage at, or this, or what's your heart rate at? But I did like check my heart rate, and my heart rate jumped from like a resting in like the 70s to like 100 beats per minute of just like, and that's just pure like anxiety. Just it definitely was just an intense hour of time for sure.
That night was it's really weird because there's that intense storm, but that was actually probably my second best night of sleep was in that. Like there's something. Well, my best night of sleep was the last night when it just kind of like just rained.
Very light.
There's something about, I think subconsciously, like, I sleep really well feeling sheltered, and like I consciously feel more sheltered when there's something in the environment that I'm being sheltered from. So like when it's raining, I sleep really, really well. And so like having had that, like that wind and lightning and rain, it just like knocked me out. I was just like, I slept so well that night, and that was, second best night of sleep.
I don't think I slept at all until after the storm ended, and it was probably like a half an hour after the storm ended. But then by then it was only like 5 hours left of the night.
Yeah.
And then I was like stressed. I was like, oh, I did extra miles compared to everyone before. Then I was up worried about the lightning. Now I have to sleep. Why can't I sleep? And so then it was like, that was my worst night of sleep on trail.
Did you?
After my biggest day. Because I ended up doing over 25 miles that day. And so I was like feeling like I really needed to sleep.
Yeah. Did you wake up, Derek? I don't know.
Yeah, I did.
The guy who could sleep through everything couldn't even sleep through that one.
Yeah, no, that definitely woke me up. And I was pretty nervous, but I was like looking around in my tent. I'm like, oh, nothing I can do about it. So.
There isn't. Like,
Derek's
there's nothing you can
at
do.
peace
Just
with God.
lay
He knows he's in a safe spot.
But really what I ended up doing, because like the lightning and the rain, it did give me anxiety. Like definitely I was anxious. I was like, well, I better not get struck by lightning.
I better not.
But,
Maddie would kill me if I died by lightning.
My main thoughts for self-preservation were like, well, guess I'll just try to stay away from my trekking poles on either side of me, like in the tent, and that's the best I can do now. So,
So did you lay on your side?
No, I just made. I mean, I was already pretty centered. My pitch was pretty good on my tent. I just kept laying there. What I ended up doing, if I wasn't going to sleep, I'm like, well, I'm going to flip over my stomach. I had my phone there and just played like those silly little offline games, like solitaire or something. So I just sat there playing solitaire for like an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And then when it stopped, I'm like, all right, and then fell asleep again. But
and Tayson's the only one who got any footage of it. The rest of us, for whatever
I just
reason,
turned on my
didn't.
camera and got flashes of light and big booms, and then just you could probably get some you could hear the rain just like hammering down and then letting up and hammering down. But it was nuts. But we made it through that. We all survived. No one was struck by lightning. We did. Oh, I did fail to mention this, that when we were right after we climbed into our shelters, we had some elk come right into camp and skirt around the edge, and they like basically were just feeding up like they normally would, and probably about stepped on little old Derek's tent over there, and they're like, what? They like kind of chirped like they were just like astonished that there was all of a sudden this tent in their basin, and then they kind of went up and around our tents and then past mine, and it was an eventful night, I guess you could say, between wildlife and storms. But
yeah, when the lightning flashes kept happening, I eventually ended up just kind of like, I could see like the lightning flash start to happen, so I just closed my eyes and just pretend it wasn't flashing for a little while, and
you could see it through your eyelids.
Yeah, though. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd close my eyes and it'd just be like,
yeah,
still blasting.
No, I would just blink when I could see a lightning flash coming on and pretend it wasn't there, and then I didn't really feel as anxious because I wasn't really focused on lightning and thunder. It's just
Well, we get up the next morning and we had another big day, and this was our last day like in the high country. So we had a lot of miles to cover, more big passes, and so we got started. And I don't know, I mean, basically
it was a beautiful morning. Like it was so calm and nice after that storm. It was really, really pretty.
Yeah. So basically we were descending for a good chunk of that morning, dropping down to, had some moments where we passed like where we had to say goodbye to Brennan last year, past the lake that he got picked up at.
Brigham made friends with a deer named Wanda.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brigham's pet Wanda came to visit town.
She tried to steal his breakfast.
Really pretty uneventful. I think I was still feeling a little sick and just trying to just manage that and click off miles and get food in me, and I think everyone was kind of feeling that same way. We were talking a little bit about like how far we should push that day, and other than that, it was kind of I think we talked a little less that day, and we went.
To me, like day 4 was probably one of my like hardest days. Not physically per se, but I did get probably the worst sleep that night before. And so I feel like I was feeling pretty dang like sleepy.
Once the lightning left, you're like, I can't stop playing solitaire for another hour.
No, just in general, like my quality of sleep wasn't like amazing, and I was feeling it that day on day 4. But I think for me mentally, it was like, well, last year the buildup was all towards Anderson Pass and everything beyond, right? And then this year we got all that done and out of the way and back over North Pole Pass, which the year before had been like the start of the most crazy stuff. And so the way I was remembering it in my head, North Pole Pass and what we'd done, everything like before that, that was the bulk of the trip. And so basically the trip was over. And so to me at that point, I'm like, well, day 4 feels like it's just endless miles as we're trying to like be done and get off the mountain at that point.
And we couldn't stop talking about pizza.
Yeah. So to me, I was probably mentally more checked out after day 3. I was mentally, okay, we did all the passes, time to go home. But then like we still had another night of camping and another day of hiking after that. So mentally I was kind of ready to be done on day 4 after not sleeping well. And so in that sense, I think I was having like probably the hardest day of the whole trip was day 4.
I think we kind of
going. I'm like, man, I'm ready to go. You know.
I feel like we started to like feel like we've walked this section before.
Yeah.
But then I remember like after I got on North Pole Pass, went through some of that. I'm like, the section between Chapita Lake and Leidy Peak, though, I was like, that's a really cool section. Like I am excited for that, and so that was definitely the highlight of the day. Is around right after lunch. Essentially, we got back above tree line, and you cover these two. I don't call them two big basins, 2 passes, and they're really awesome as well. It's funny. All the hikers kept saying, "Oh, you're like." There's like 2 hikers that are actually doing the full Highline. A lot of them don't go all the way to the highway. They start a little bit short, and like the 2 hikers like, oh my gosh, there's so many cows, and they were like so obsessed with telling us there's cows down the trail. But we got up there was some cows like in this pass, but like overall it was just a really nice pass. And it was a good chunk of the day. I think me and Tyler are kind of hiking together through that big basin, and it was pretty enjoyable, nice pass.
Brigham really started to gap us.
It was the first time Brigham finally decided to not follow. He takes the lead, and it's just like NASCAR. He's just out of there, man. I don't know what happened. I want to know. I actually want to hear from you, Brigham. Like, so Brigham, basically we had this long, drawn-out pass it was just very, like, it wasn't a steep pass. It was just this super long, rolling hill, long pass. And Brigham and Derek were kind of hiking together, and then the next thing we know, like, Brigham is just, like, gone. Like, I don't know. What was with that, Brigham? I felt like it was a big flex. Like he was just like, "Hey, look at me! I've still got all this energy. What's wrong with you guys? You know, whatever." But what actually was?
That's my style. No, I don't know. I was just feeling. I was just having a good day. I think I was just. I felt like I progressively just enjoyed my time more and more. I was just happy, and I felt. Like I still enjoyed that part of the trail, and I don't know. I think it was just I felt great. I felt like I had tons of energy, and I kind of just wanted to like check out and just go like at my natural just go, kind of like as if I were hiking by myself, and like just let my mind kind of. Like, I don't know, drift away and just go. It was really enjoyable. I really enjoyed that whole day. It was
I actually was trying as hard as I could to keep up with Brigham too, and I could not. I mentioned on day 3 starting to have some problems with my hip. That long drawn out pass that we were going up at that time.
No trail.
There's no trail. There's another one of those without a trail, so there's like lumpy ground where the grass grows, but it grows enough that a trail really can't be there.
It just grows rocks. It just grows a lot of rocks.
A lot of rocks and lumpy ground. And it was also sloped. We were traversing across this sloped
of like
hillside.
a huge bowl end of the top of a basin.
Yeah. And so I was trying to keep up with Brigham once he started pulling away. I was like, I should be able to go that fast. But I just could not. My hip was like hurting so bad after this a few miles of walking on this really
off camber
sloped basin with lumpy ground and rocks everywhere. My hip was like not allowing me to move any faster.
I was guessing Brigham just needed to poop really bad, and he wanted to get all the way over and have some privacy before we caught up.
Been a good guess, yeah.
No privacy
it
up
actually,
there.
I think one lesson here or thing to note is before I actually went and ran that ultra, a friend of mine had said, in an ultra you're going to have lows, and you're going to have highs. They're going to come at different times. You'll be maybe even surprised. You may have a low early on. It doesn't necessarily mean that the low is going to be at the very end, type of thing. And I think that happens to everyone on trips at times, where you have like a high moment or a high, like last year for me going over North Pole Pass, I just happened to be in a really good spot mentally, physically, felt good. Or for me this time, like I felt really good going over Red Knob. Everyone was talking about how steep it was, and I felt really good going over Red Knob. And so I think there's going to be lows and highs, and I think if you read into them too much, it can be a detriment. Brigham, he's always holding back. He could probably go way faster than we ever know because he never will like walk in front. But I think it is just something to note that you can have lows and highs that can be any time, any day, and just don't read too much into them. People could definitely get in a negative spiral and just check out of a trip per se with something like that, but you can always bounce back. But yeah, Brigham tore off up the field, got up there, did his private poop that he's not telling us about, and then took a little break, and then we got to do kind of the last section of above tree line. It's this really beautiful section, goes above this really beautiful lake and basin, and this area where we took breakfast there last time coming the other direction, looking at this cabin down in there, just a really, really pretty section, and went down around Lady Peak, and then it was, we were going to go down to basically where we started the dry section. And for those of you that don't know the Uinta Highline, there's a dry section where there is 25 miles of no water. So it's a very significant dry section. And our plan was to either get right to the edge of the water or to eat dinner at the edge of the water and go another 4 miles in. And so we were able to get to the edge of the water for dinner. So that pretty much meant that we were going to start into the dry section, spend the night in the dry section, and then finish the trail the next day. So that's essentially what we did, and it was interesting for us. We had our dinner, we all cameled up, we drank what we could there. I was trying to hydrate as much as I could before we got there. Like I wanted to get there hydrated so that I wasn't already behind going into the dry section. And even with me trying my hardest to hydrate, man, I just never felt like I was really fully caught up, but did a little bit better. And we basically left, I think all of us had about 3.5 liters of water to go into the 25-mile dry section.
And we had to camp in that section, where a lot of times we'll drink a little extra and we'll use a little of extra water for meals when we camp. And so going into that with only 3.5 liters was like a little tight.
Yeah, it was like a little concerning, I think, because to this point there's so much water in the Uintas that we've only been filtering 2 liters at a time maximum. We've only ever been carrying 2 liters of water. And so, a little bit of concern there, but we cruised down, crossed the big cow field essentially, where I'm sure most of these people have been talking about all the cows. Me and Brigham tried to do a little cattle drive to push the cows over at Tyler and Derek, but
we just walked straight through the field. Yeah,
they just walked through the cow pies, and me and Brigham went around, but it was nice. We took a little bit of time finding a campsite, but we ended up finding a spot just in kind of a forested area that they'd gone in and harvested wood out of it before. So we're out of the wilderness essentially at this point. And I quite liked our camp spot. It was dark, it was quiet, and it was nice. I don't know, like
it was very nice.
Camp spot was good. The end of the day was very pleasant because it was almost all downhill, so it was low exertion. Spirits were pretty high, and set up camp. It started to rain during the night, and no lightning or thunder, but just this light trickle of rain, and that was my best night of sleep on the trail by far.
Me too.
Had a really enjoyable night. But
I had my hardest point in the trail, like in those last 3 or 4 miles before dinner. My feet were hurting really bad, and I was feeling really depleted. We had dinner and then did 3 more miles, or 3.5, yeah. And I felt okay then, but I was like feeling really beat that night. And me and Derek set up our tents in pretty crappy spots. So I was very surprised that I slept as well as I did in such a ski-wampus tent site. I just shoved a bunch of clothes under the one side of my sleeping pad and then
level it out.
I actually had a very poor night of sleep again for the 2 nights in a row, and I think I attribute most of it on this night 4 to I think at dinner time I had like a horchata, and as soon as I after dinner finished that up, it did not sit well with me. I had to go rush off to visit trees fairly often after that throughout the entire night.
Oh, wait, I didn't know that.
And during
that's where the rain comes into play, because it's nice background
I thought it was
white
just
noise.
Cows walking around.
No, I got up like so many times. It was just after dinner. And
Dang.
then during day 5, I was fine, but pretty much throughout the entire night, I'm like, well, this is ridiculous.
That's crazy, because I had horchatas before almost every night that I had like water, and
This is my
they
second.
were like hitting the spot for me.
This is my second time really trying with the horchata. The first time was when we did the Grand Canyon, rim to rim to rim, and that also didn't sit well with me. It didn't do the same thing to me, but it felt like I felt not very well.
What if you just don't like if you don't agree with like the powdered milk or something that they kind of put in it?
Well, I don't know. I have powdered milk all the time, not on trail, but like.
That sucks, man.
Yeah, I think after 2 tries, I'm like, well, I love horchata. I love how it tastes.
You can give the rest to me.
But this mixed stuff, I don't think it's a good trail food. I think it's going to have to be, if I want horchata at my house, it's like a hot chocolate mix now.
Well, that one's made by Scratch Labs, and it's made for ultra runners to recover their stomachs after the GI distress that they put themselves through.
Did the opposite to my stomach, I would say.
It distressed your GI.
It distressed it for sure.
Well, it's a little different thing, It's designed for ultra runners who've
Really
been living
intense.
off of sugar for 45 to 100 miles.
Yeah.
And you probably weren't quite in that situation.
I had plenty of carbs and other things that were not straight sugars. They were, roundabout, I guess.
I don't love them on trail either. I like them after a really strenuous one-day effort, but...
So we finished up that night, got a good night's sleep, started the next day, and again, we're in the dry section. So we have about 20 miles left on the entire Uinta Highline to finish, and we are trying to get that done as early as possible so that Brennan, our shuttle driver, could pick us up with a nice hot car full of Domino's pizza that we'd all been dreaming about for a few days now.
You
at the
literally
trailhead
sent
at
him
like
a
6.
message like on day 3 asking if he could bring pizza.
It was like day 3. We're like, wait, we're not gonna be able to go get food. It'll be too late. So we gotta have Brendan pick us up food and meet us at the trailhead with it. So we're like, let's do pizza. And so we sent him our list, our order essentially on like day 2.5 of the journey. And then after that, we just couldn't stop talking about how good pizza sounded for the next 2.5 days. But yeah, we're trying to get there before 6, which is when 5:30 to 6 is when we thought he could be there. So we're trying to get 20 miles in basically by 5 o'clock. And so yeah, we started going and we were cruising. I remember passing a guy.
16 miles to water.
Yeah, we had about 15 to 16 miles to water and then another 5. I remember passing a guy maybe 4 miles in, and he was all loaded up, with stuff. And he was carrying in his hands like 3 liters of water, and then his pack had water.
And carrying a bladder. It looked like it was a 3-liter bladder.
Yeah, he was loaded up with water. He'd spent the night in the dry section as well. Oh, I forgot about the kilt guy. Remember?
Yeah, no, right? Yeah. So early in the morning on day 5,
kilt.
Cargo
kilt.
Cargo.
We were hiking out of there, and Tayson was in front. I was kind of hiking with him, behind him a little bit, and we passed this guy going the opposite direction. He recognized you, right, Tayson?
Yeah, so he called out to me, "Oh, I recognize you," but Derek didn't hear him.
I was still like far enough away that I didn't hear what he said. And so when I walk up there and they're stops on the trail chatting, he turns to me and he's like, "Oh, I recognize you too. I know you from somewhere." And I just look at him and just sit there staring at him. Well, I don't know. He's like,
Derek's thinking he knows him personally like a friend, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't think that it's from work or from YouTube or anything. And so Derek is puzzled as all can be. And so we talk with the guy for a while. We start walking up the trail, and finally I'm like, "Derek, he knows you from our YouTube channel, right?" And he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he knew who I was." And he's like, "Oh."
Yeah.
Because I think you said to me, "I just can't figure out how that guy knows me. Maybe I know him from here." And I was like, no. Don't overthink this.
Yeah, no, because like I thought he would mostly, like, by the time I walked up to where they were chatting, like at that point he basically had turned to me and had talked about, "Hey, I know you from somewhere," and I was just could not figure it out. Man, I don't know if I've ever seen you in my life.
Had some steam coming off of Derek's head. He was thinking so hard.
Yeah.
But anyways, we passed the guy with a bunch of water. These guys are really cameling up for this section. But one thing to note here, I think that's interesting, is water consumption. People sometimes look at water consumption on like how much water they need for the miles. But I think the smarter way to look at water is how much water consumption do you need for the amount of hours between the water. I think it's a good, fairly smart way to look at it sometimes, because us with 3.5 liters getting through this section, we kind of knew how long it would take us, and so we kind of could gauge it that way. Versus some of these people, I think some of them had no idea how much water they really needed, so they were packing a ton of extra water because they had no idea. Some people were probably underestimating it significantly, the opposite direction. But being able to judge your water and know your body and being aware of that can be really helpful for a system like this, because you could way over carry water, which is probably what this guy was doing. He was well past halfway and probably was still carrying like 5 liters of water, and he was probably just way overweighting himself. Versus we met some people a little bit later on that I might be concerned that they weren't going to carry enough water, or so on and so forth. So judge that. If you kind of can get an idea of like, I need to drink roughly this much water, and those types of things, it can be quite helpful. One of the things about doing the Uinta Highline the way we did it is, if you're going to get dehydrated on the last day, not the first day.
And the last day that's downhill.
Yeah, it's all downhill. It's the last day. So if you come off trail a little dehydrated, that's way better than starting. Because when you're starting the other direction, you don't want to be heading into the high country and getting dehydrated. It's going to set you up for altitude sickness for sure, and just a tougher trip in general. So we had that going for us. But overall, that next 15 miles from the time we woke up to water, that felt like a pretty long section. Everyone's just thinking about pizza. Everyone's just head down. And essentially, we just got in this really good mode of just asking Brigham military questions and learning all sorts of things about the military. And that probably saved my life on that trail from just kind of, getting too bored and having it draw out way too long.
Just for the listener that isn't too familiar, so it's a dry section, and this whole day, these 20 miles we had to crank off, it's very much all the same. Like, there's not a lot of variety. You're walking through pine woods, like, pretty much the whole time. Some of them are more open because they've been logged. Some of them haven't been logged, so they're not open, but really you're just walking through like woods, and you don't really get many views or vantage points, and so it does get like mundane, like kind of boring. You've been through like this incredible country, and then it's just this kind of like average walk in the woods for 20 miles, and it's surprising how hot it gets at still like 9,500 feet to 10,000 feet in the woods, but it was just really hot. But I think the other, like, knowing that it was all downhill, knowing like our own abilities and our own experience, like, I think on the water side, we all kind of had an idea of like what we needed to carry and what we could put up with in terms of, rationing it out to last as long as we needed it to. And so
overall, I felt pretty good. Like I personally had plenty of water for that carry.
Yeah, I would call out between Brigham's stories and Tyler making me a tortilla with summer sausage, cheese, and mayonnaise. I was on cloud nine, man. That was the best meal I had the entire time. I was really still feeling quite nauseous. Nothing in my pack was looking good at all, and I was just craving like fatty foods like the mayo, and then like the summer sausage, just like this real fatty meat. The salt, man, I was craving that. So that, and then Derek also gave me a tortilla with tuna, jalapeno tuna. And man, both of those like not saved my life, but man, they were so welcome. I had gotten in a rush packing for the trip and just time wise, and I hadn't stuck to my staples, and I know from last year that my body really craved those things. Packing the mayonnaise packets out there, and some of that was like a lifesaver on Highline the year before, and I drifted from my guns. So I mean, once you figure out what you want on trail, stick with it. But I would say I'd been so much also in the mind of like this ultra running thing where it's just all sugars and carbs, and man, by day 3, like I didn't want to look at sugars and carbs anymore at all. I wanted like proteins and tortillas and cheeses and
salt,
all that kind of stuff. And so just be aware of that. Like what you want on day 1, day 2 often changes by the time you're out there for more like 4 to 5 days. Anyways, we got through the dry section. I think all of us had enough water. We did fine. And it was very relieving that we could get through that much of a section with the amount of water that we did carry. Still able to stay pretty light, pretty fast, and got to where we were. Got to our first water. We stopped to get water. Brigham got stung by a wasp, which was nice and exciting. We shifted to the other side of the river and filtered our water, and then we had a really cool encounter with 3 altitude hoodies walking up on trail.
So here comes Isaac, one of our Live Ultralight members, charging up the trail. He was leading a group of friends and people he knew that they were all out about to do the parts of the Highline, as like sections of it, except for him. He was actually going to continue on and do the whole Highline Trail. There was 3 or 4 people wearing altitude hoodies, multiple shadow light backpacks. And that was kind of cool to see, like how much that he, being a Live Ultralight member, had been able to benefit by getting access to the gear, and then he kind of shared the love with people he knew and made sure they had some good gear for the trip as well. They looked, a lot of them, like they were much better off than a lot of other backpackers that we'd passed on the trail with the gear setups that they had, the ones that were using some of our stuff.
It was cool. I mean, he'd been trying to set them up for success. It sounded like this is kind of like some of their first backpacking trips, and so he was kind of acting as their guide, and so he'd helped them, I think probably with some of the gear choices and different things. But it was cool. It was kind of like we thought like, oh, that might be kind of the last group that we meet on trail, and it was cool that it was him. He was from Utah. He'd actually lived in Malaysia, so we kind of bonded over that, and just seeing the gear, it was fun to chat with him. He was very aware of us. He was one of those guys, I think, that also was like, oh, you made it through Anderson Pass, and just very aware. So it's really cool to meet you, Isaac. Appreciate you being a Live Ultralight member, and also just getting people outside. That's a mission of ours, a passion of ours, is to help people get outside and experience that. So you're a great ambassador of what we try to do here as well. So that was a lot of fun. Got our water filtered up and started heading off again for our last 5 miles. I think everyone was feeling like, oh yeah, this will be great. Had an enjoyable 1-2 miles. Ran into another guy and he was like, hey, I just watched your Highline video like a day ago. And so then we talked to those guys for a while. Really cool actually, because he had hiked like the AT, the Arizona Trail, the Colorado Trail. So he had a lot of big trails under his belt, and he was bringing his grandson out for their first trip together to go do the Uinta Highline. And Brigham made the comment of, like, I hope this is what I'm doing, at your age. And it's true. I think we all hope that we're just out there getting after it, throughout our entire lives, no matter what walk of life we're in. And it was definitely really cool to just see them being able to bond in a situation like that. I mean, they weren't too far into the trip yet, but it was still cool to meet with them and talk with them.
And then after that,
And we didn't have too many more miles to go after that. It was like 2 or 3 miles left.
Easy miles.
We assumed. We assumed.
they felt like the longest 3 miles
Yeah,
of my
downhill,
life.
just
Downhill through massive, massive boulders.
like walking on
Well, it's like,
basketball-sized
Yeah.
moving boulders for 3 miles.
And
the
it
whole
was
time.
steep. There was a steep downhill through all these big rocks. And it wouldn't have been so bad, like, say, this was like our second day on the trail. But after, at this point, over 100 miles, because again, we said this is between 105 and 110 miles, well over 100 miles on the trail and in the last, 5 days leading to this point, our feet were thrashed. And so every step on these boulders, we could feel that through our shoes.
my
no
triceps were getting pretty sore from taking a lot of weight on the trekking poles as we were going down.
My muscles were also getting tired to the point where, like, it wasn't a smooth motion stepping down. It was kind of like a jerky, you step forward and almost kind of, not fall, but it just wasn't a smooth
Can
motion
brace
stepping
yourself
down.
as well.
Yeah, and so, like,
I
your
felt
legs
that.
just going down didn't work as smoothly and nicely, and everything was more jarring. And for 2 miles straight, we would just go down these rocky, steep, bouldery trails.
It was also very hot and it got quite humid because we had storm clouds coming in, but they wouldn't just rain on us. So it was just very humid and
Humid
hot.
and hot and rocky.
Wind wasn't moving.
No airflow.
Those were hard miles.
They really were. Yeah, my knees started hurting, and you were in the trees, and I was trying not to look at my phone to see how far we had to go. Like, I thought that would be a better option. It probably wasn't, because I kept thinking that the end was around the corner for like a mile and a half. Yeah, for like 30 minutes. I'm like, we're at the end. Nope. We're at the end. Nope. And so, yeah, it really drug on, but finally made it to the bottom. Everyone was very happy to hit the bottom. We get to walk across kind of this meadow.
Well, that
And-
meadow was a tease too, because they're like, "Oh,
Yeah, we thought it was
we
the
made
last
it to
meadow."
the end. It's the meadow." And then you walk across the meadow, and you go back into trees for a second, and then there's another meadow,
And that's the last
and
one.
that's the end. So we had a couple false endings there for sure.
But yeah, we got there. We're all like, oh, yes. We sit down. We know we've got, probably at least 30 minutes before Brennan's there. We're super excited to just sprawl out. Tyler just lays down, spread eagle on the ground to fall asleep
For
or
about
stretch out. And then
2 minutes.
Yeah, literally 2 minutes go by and rain starts falling. So then we all hunker up under the trees, and finally I'm like, I turn to Brigham, and he says that the bathroom has enough cover for us, and so me and him head over there and hang out basically in the little covering of the outhouse, and pretty soon the other two come by, and now we're all just 4 crammed in the little cubby of the outhouse.
Kind of a cozy little shelter there. It's just the covered section of the entrance to the outhouse, and there was room for us all. We just pulled out our pads and wiped off our dirty legs and cleaned our feet.
Yeah.
I was a little bit late over there because I didn't mind the rain. I'd pulled off my socks and shoes, and I knew those things because every night I smelled them. Going to my tent, I knew they smelled real bad and were really dirty. So I actually just leaned up against a tree, really comfortable as far as like the position I was sitting in, and leaning back against it, and let my feet and legs get all soaked, and I watched the dirt just run off of them, and that smell air out a little while. And then after that, I kind of hobbled over to the outhouse and sat down, so the rest of me didn't get too soaked. But
yeah, so we were sitting there, and we had a random visitor. I think we must have known that we needed a good laugh right then or something. I mean, we were happy, but we needed another laugh. So we're sitting there huddled under the outhouse, and the rain had let up a little bit, but it was still drizzling. And this guy just comes pulling up on this big fat tire e-bike, and he says, "Hey, I'm from the Forest Service."
Said, "I'm Forest Service."
I'm Forest Service. How are you guys doing? We're like, good. And he's like, you guys got a ride? And we're like, yeah, we got a shuttle driver.
We were abandoned.
Yeah, we're like, no, we got a shuttle driver coming. He's like, oh, good. I wanted to make sure you guys weren't abandoned out here. We're like, no, they'll be here in another 15 minutes or so. And he's like, okay, good. And then he just kind of sits there in silence for a second, and he goes, I bought an e-bike.
Well,
right?
since this is the end, we should try to be a little more accurate about how Tayson is giving this guy way too much credit with his illiteracy and pronunciation and ability to speak clearly.
Okay.
This guy
He looked real dirty.
And talked really slow and slurred, if you know what I mean. So when he said, I bought an e-bike, it was like, took about 10 seconds to say, I bought, and then he swallowed, and then he said, an e-bike, and then he slowly started to pedal away.
Well, he started to try to back it up, and then he's like, it's real big.
It was about 5 sizes too big for him.
So he's pedaling off. He turns around to pedal off, and Tyler's like, there's no way he bought that e-bike. He just left $1 at someone's camp and took it. He was just laughing. But anyways, he turns to go, and he's not talking to anyone in particular. Now he's like 20 yards away from us, and he's just like, this is real fun, or something. And he's like, this is great. That's what he says. He starts pedaling away. Oh man, I literally laughed until I was shedding a few tears. I thought it was so dang funny. But no, that guy was on cloud 9, literally just hanging out in his own world, having fun. And next thing we know, our shuttle driver with pizza was showing up, and that was a very welcome sight. We were all very happy to see Brennan, and I think most of us put down about 5 slices of pizza before we even knew what happened. And man, that was good. Had to pick up some Coke. That was very satisfying. But yeah, it was good. And then we just did a whole lot of driving to get home, and we had finally completed our Uinta Highline Trail. 2 years essentially in the making in some ways. Some of us have been aware of the trail and thinking about it for a whole lot more than that. But it was really an amazing experience. A lot of lessons were learned over multiple years, but really just incredible country. That wilderness style country, is just rugged. It's unforgiving, but it's some of the most pristine, beautiful country that you can ever experience. And it was just really remarkable.
It's one of those things that you definitely at least for me, you look back on and say, I'm glad I did it. Tayson asked, we were doing some interview questions and trying to film some things, maybe put a video together at the end of the trail, and one of them was, would you do it again? And my immediate answer was no. But not that I didn't enjoy the trail. I did, and I would go back to do parts of it. But if I were to spend a week and do 100 plus miles somewhere, I would not do the same trail again, having seen it once. I would go explore somewhere new, but definitely it was worth doing the once, and definitely would be worth going back to explore some of those parts, here and there, bits and pieces again. It was pretty amazing what we were able to experience.
Yeah. I think a lot of us were kind of on the same page of, like, some of us would do the whole thing again, but really most of us would want to go do like the 60 to 70 mile section, kind of starting at like Leidy Peak and just going through like the more high country section, and kind of cutting off essentially the last day. The last day of like the last 25-ish miles is, it's not that it's like not worth doing, but it's not worth doing twice type of thing. But
the logistics is hard to do a point-to-point shuttle and everything. So for me, I would probably rather do some big loops that went through some of the other basins that we didn't see yet, and then hopped on the Highline for a while and then hopped off,
Yeah, that's more of just personality-wise where I'm at. Like, I don't need to go do and see the same thing again probably ever, unless it's like bits of it, but I also got to see something new. I'm big on seeing new things and doing new big things, so especially if I've taken a week to go do something, it's probably going to be something new.
So, okay.
I was just going to say, I'd definitely do it again. I would totally agree with the starting from the east to the west, that first 25-mile day. I would absolutely eliminate that. There's no, in my mind, like the 80-mile Highline Trail, from Leidy Peak to the west. I'd do that many times throughout the rest of my life. In fact, I've already talked to my kids about kind of making that a family trip when they turn a certain age, and just kind of having it be a family rite of passage. And then honestly, I could spend like years of compiled time in the Uintas, like aside from the Highline Trail with my kids, but just like some loops and some routes.
So much fishing you can do.
3 to 4 day trips up there that put together like a 50-mile trip. I think like there's like a lifetime of
There's
country to explore.
So much up there that's just amazing stuff that you could easily spend a lifetime exploring it. So, I mean, yeah, there's still plenty to do.
I think if there's one con of our trip, it's that we went through the country so fast. At times, it can feel fast. You're kind of zoned into clicking off some miles and stuff. But
I think that's worth talking about, though, because I think when people are listening, they're like, "Oh, Joe couldn't do the pace you guys wanted to do. Why not just slow down? Or why did we go so fast through such pretty country?" So I think we ought to kind of explain what our purposes were for doing the Uinta Highline in 4.5 days, where most people do it in 8 or 10.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about it like last year, but there's going to be new listeners. I mean, it's multifaceted. There's like practical reasons, logistical reasons. There's kind of like company operations reasons. Like one of the things we talked about last year is this is basically like the company leadership team minus one, and it's very hard to just basically have 80% of your company out of the office it's hard for 5 days. Like, we're all playing catch up with our workload now, but like that's a big deal. So like stretching that out for like 3 or 4 more days it's not very practical or prudent. That's just one aspect.
Yeah, I mean, there's also family time. Like, we did this basically during one work week without needing to go on to weekends. So we didn't have to cut a whole lot into like weekend family time, personal time, things like that. So that's another facet that if we can do that, we will, but yeah, I mean, I think to the listener, like if they're doing this for personal, like making that a 6 or 7 day trip, slowing down even 1 to 2 days would have probably been preferable. And I would think you'd be able to have fished some of the nights and spent time maybe in some of the spots and, just things like that. But yeah, we definitely condensed it primarily for the purpose of, work week and leadership being out of office and, just some of those type of facets. It also is a really good opportunity for us to push the limits of gear and gear testing and push the thesis of living ultralight. Joe coming on this trip, it was awesome because he got to really experience like the pure necessity of having less weight on you and how much that matters when you're like pushing the limits of gear and pushing some boundaries some days and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons for us, but yeah, I would say like just because we did it that way does not mean that anyone else should plan on that. It's just we had some limitations that we worked around. So
yeah, I think that when we're pushing ourselves that hard and we're doing that many miles, it really pushes the gear beyond like the normal usage of it, which is awesome R&D for us too. So we had a lot of R&D going on, and you'll see in our videos there's a lot of unfamiliar products, and that's all we're going to say about them.
Yeah.
Right? It's
all
just
we can
R&D.
say.
But
let's do really quick. We're pretty far into this. Let's kind of do a rapid fire round really quick. So 2 questions. Well, I'll make it 3. Biggest takeaway from Highline, number 1. Number 2, favorite piece of gear. Number 3, what you would have left behind. So we'll start with you, Derek, with biggest takeaway from Highline.
Biggest takeaway from Highline, I need way more crunchy snacks.
Okay. Makes perfect sense. All right.
1 bag of corn nuts was not enough.
Okay. Favorite piece of gear?
Favorite piece of gear? I would say probably my tent, the 40th tent. These guys comment about me setting it up real quick every night. It's really not hard to set up.
Especially when you don't care what the ground looks like underneath.
I had great ground, I thought, every night. And you have so much space in there, even more than a lot of the freestanding style tents I've used before. So that was really nice.
Okay. What would you have left behind?
I brought too much insulation because of last year where we were so cold and in the snow. I had both the Ventus and we've started teasing out the Vario, which is a warmer synthetic jacket. And it basically replaces the 3-season puffy. And I had that and my mid layer and rain gear and I just didn't need it. I just did not need that much insulation.
Yeah.
I also had Dragon Wool zip-offs, which I never used, so probably less insulation.
Less insulation. Tyler,
What was the first
your
one?
first question is biggest takeaway.
Dang.
This is rapid fire, Tyler.
I
So
know. All right, should we go to the next one?
his biggest takeaway was he likes to do 20-mile days, not 22-mile days. All right. Next one.
That probably was it. Like, being in such amazing country and doing 23 to 25-mile days, like, just doesn't quite give me enough time to soak it in the way that I would like. But 20 miles is, like, totally doable. So,
Favorite piece of gear?
favorite piece of gear. I really liked the Vario jacket for this application. It was like perfect insulation.
So
Nights.
again, the Vario jacket is basically, it's kind of like a sister jacket to the Ventus, but you'll hear more about it in a couple of months. And then
What'd you leave behind?
what would you leave behind?
Like Derek, I was packed for cold, snowy weather, and I don't really like.
You would have left the muckluck boots behind. And
No, I mean, I wasn't that bad, but like I did have the wool zip-off bottoms. I would have still brought those, knowing how unforgiving those mountains are and how backcountry you are. But I did pack like a big, heavy pair of wool socks that I only planned on sleeping in. But I also had packed our Loft-Tech booties.
oh my god!
So like, I didn't need both of those.
Yeah.
So
That's intense,
so I would have
man.
left the socks. 'Cause
I also
Okay.
had the booties, just too much insulation.
All right.
Well, there were some nights where all I slept with was the booties and the balaclava that I was wearing because I was too hot.
No one
everywhere
peeks in Tyler's tent at night. Yeah, we ask him to pitch it low. He always pitches it high. I don't know what the deal is. Says he wants maximum airflow, you know. But all right.
I could see the lightning.
Yeah, for some reason he could see the lightning when all of us couldn't see it out of our tents. But all right, Brigham, biggest takeaway?
Oh crap, man! My legs got fried. Like I think I've got permanently burned tissue in my
Even your lips have been flaking off.
below the knee. My lips, like I can deal with that. They're tiny, but from the knee down, my legs got. I had blisters on my legs, and so I mean, I'm stupid. I didn't take any sunscreen. I've never taken sunscreen backpacking in my life, and you know, part of that's, you know, the Highline Trail last year. There's just that snow and clouds and rain seared into my brain that like I just thought, man, if anything, I'm just gonna be cold and wanting to put on pants and rain pants, but man, my legs were fried. So biggest takeaway is I can't do that. I gotta take sunscreen.
Favorite piece of gear?
I'm gonna go. The previous choices were very good. I sustained those, but my favorite piece of gear was a backpack that I was testing.
Okay. And what would you have left behind?
I'd leave behind the 15-degree top quilt. That was definitely overkill. The 30 would have been perfect. 30-degree top quilt would have been perfect, and I was just over insulated every single night, and so that was definitely like some unnecessary weight. So yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all really good, so we'll just close it there. My biggest takeaway from the trip, man, I don't know. I should have been thinking, or I'm the last one to go, so I should have a takeaway, but I think it's just like kind of related to just overall experience and like remembering your experiences. And so for me, what I would have left behind is some of the crappy food I didn't want to eat. What I wish I would have brought, like the takeaway, is just like I should have stuck to my food plan that I have vetted out before. You know, I stuck to like my packing gear list, but for some reason I just didn't follow through with my food side of what I've proven on trail. So that was just a big takeaway, is I I had to basically deal with kind of nausea and not wanting to eat and stuff like that may have been somewhat preventable had I packed off of what my experience. So big takeaway is just stick to what experience wise, and that pays dividends, I think, on a trip like this. Like, you should never go into a trip like this with this level of intensity mileage without doing a lot more vetting, a lot more time on trail, and that will pay big dividends for you. So, and then I would say my favorite piece of gear, man, that one's tough. Like Derek, I love my 40th. I feel super at home in there. I enjoyed a backpack that I was testing. But I would say probably for a newer thing that I was taking is I did take a newer Garmin Mini InReach Mini 2, and I was very impressed with just the improvements of the 2 over the 1. I did feel like it sent messages faster, it got messages in easier, and the battery life was like stupid good. Like, I would turn it on and leave it on all day long. I'd turn it off when I slept and turn it back on the next morning, and I had like 80% battery by the end of the trip. 5 days of that. It was ridiculous. It was like suspiciously good. So that was kind of a new piece of gear that I enjoyed seeing and using on trail. So I don't know. Also, though, just Garmin watch too. I'll just call that out. Like Brigham hates for us to talk about. We are just constantly watching the miles, looking at pace, looking at heart rates. But I love to watch my heart rate at elevation and try to help myself, hydrate and eat and do different things to help, see if I try to help myself get good rest, get my heart rate low at night, monitor it, things like that. So that's another one. But all right, we've been going a while.
I want to put out one last thing with this. So for those of you who didn't see it or didn't participate, we treated this trip as part of our Live Ultralight member 100-mile challenge for this summer. And what that entailed was us doing a training program through the summer with the participants who signed up for that. And then we had a trip window where everyone got to go out and do a 100-mile trip at the same time. So in a way, it was an opportunity for people to do a 100-mile trip with us. Because of permitting and stuff, we can't have hundreds of people on trail together at the same time. So this is the best way we've found to do that. And this was our first year of trying this, and it was a great success. It was a good success for us. We've had participants who joined who had awesome stories and trips, and it proved the concept for us. So we're going to be doing this again next year. It may not be 100 miles, it may not be in August, but if you're interested in learning how we trained for this and learning how to do bigger days, or if you're just interested in taking part in something where we do live streams every week and we talk about the craft of backpacking, then keep an eye out for the 100-mile challenge. We'll announce it way earlier the next time around, and it'll be even bigger and better. But for this year, it was a great success as a test, and we want to thank everyone who did it with us.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. It's been awesome to see the feedback. It's been super positive. And if you listening to this, have interest in trying something out like this for yourself, watch that for next year. It would really be a fun thing to participate with. We get you more than your money's worth of swag and tons of live streams and experiences and frameworks, and it's just fun to do it as a group. So definitely pay attention for that. It was a really fun thing this year that we did. So, okay, we have gone on for a while. It was obviously a big trip, lots to go through. We really appreciate you guys hanging on for it. If you have comments on the podcast or any thoughts, make sure to leave us a review. We will read that on the show. And really appreciate all the reviews that we have. They do help the podcast grow. They help us get in front of more people and help more people get outside and live ultralight. So again, really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed, and we'll listen to you guys, or you'll listen to us, I guess, on the next episode of the Live Ultralight. All right, we'll see you.